I guess, I'll watch the video I wanted to watch, since we watched part 1 before, and there's a new episode. I guess let's learn more about the American Revolution. Last time we watched the first part from Epic History, which was mostly about, the beginning of the conflict, up to basically the Tea Party, the Boston Tea Party, which I guess I learned that there was more Tea Party. There was a lot more places where they sunk the tea into the sea. I learned that, so technically it wasn't just Boston. Yeah, we learned a lot about the beginning of the conflict between America and the UK, well, Britain at the time. Yeah, I don't know when Britain became the UK. Yeah, I don't know. But yes, so we watched that. And it was pretty interesting because Epic History is maybe the best history channel. Alright, let's see part 2, which is 250th anniversary, the battles of Lexington and Concord. Never heard of it. Let's learn about that. Whatever may be the consequences, we must risk something. If we do not, all is over. British Prime Minister Lord North.
April 1774. 11 years have passed since British victory in the 7 Years' War.
Quebec.
And since that moment, ties between the 13 colonies and the motherland have been under increasing strain. Much of the dispute is over the British Parliament's right to tax the colonies.
That is right.
A right fiercely contested by many colonists. But it is also a conflict over sovereignty, about who governs in North America.
I was gonna say, because last time they were showing the difference, and like it was something about shillings, where like the British would pay something like 15 shillings in tax or whatever, and the colonists would be just 1 or something. So raising it seemed like it wasn't crazy, but the problem was like representation. Like the colonists in America didn't have a say in, the politics and the decisions, and that's the problem, more than the tax itself, I guess. Yeah. It's not really just about tea.
And for all colonists who have a stake in westward expansion, there are added reasons to resent the British government. This is where the 7 Years' War, known locally as the French and Indian War, had started.
I don't know much about it.
The first shots were fired in 1754 in Ohio country by troops under the command of a 22-year-old Lieutenant Colonel George Washington.
Whoa. I know that guy.
After the war, the British hoped to end clashes with Native American tribes and bring peace to the frontier.
Really?
To this end, in 1763, a royal proclamation is issued, which imposes limits on further westward expansion beyond the Appalachian Mountains into the land now termed Indian Territory.
I wonder why, because out of all the country that the British has tried to colonize, Indian tribe can fight, but they're much more like the tribes. They're very like small groups and very dispersed, right? So out of all the country they've tried and have colonized, I'm surprised, they weren't more willing to like lend more aid to fully colonize America and get rid of everybody. I'm surprised.
For colonial land speculators, pioneers, and farmers, the proclamation cuts off access to a vast source of cheap land,
right, yeah,
and stokes further anti-parliamentary feeling. The colony's list of grievances seems to grow year by year.
Boston Massacre.
With each new attempt by the British Parliament to assert its authority, colonial resistance grows fiercer and bolder. The destruction of 46 tons of East India Company tea in the so-called Boston Tea Party is the final straw.
Not the tea.
Lord North's government decides to make an example of Boston and the colony of Massachusetts. In the spring of 1774, the British sent 4,000 troops to occupy the colony and pass a series of measures known as the Coercive Acts. The governor is replaced by a new military governor, General Gage. Boston's port is closed to commerce by Royal Navy blockade. Representative assemblies in Massachusetts are limited, and it becomes easier for British troops to requisition housing.
But that's only one of the places that was rebelling. Again, what we learned from the last video is that there was much more than Boston that actually were mad and sent, you know, the tea into the sea. So occupying only one of the states, is it? Don't think that's gonna help much. Oh, thank you, Evan. I'll check it out.
Throughout the colonies, the British government also passes the Quebec Act. To appease French Canadians, Catholicism is to be tolerated in Canada, angering staunch New England Protestants. Large tracts of Midwestern land are also allocated to the province of Quebec, further antagonizing American colonists who had their eyes on the land.
That's weird.
In America, the Coercive Acts are quickly labeled the Intolerable Acts.
Boston Port closed until reparation paid. Massachusetts Local Assembly meeting limited. Right to fair trial suspended in Massachusetts. What does that mean? Right to fair trial suspended. So what? If you commit a crime, you're not, like, they just instantly say you're guilty and kill you? What does that mean you don't get a fair trial? Why would you suspend that? Royal Governor allowed to requisition unoccupied housing for troops. Elonobic, what's up?
The Coercive Acts are quickly labeled the Intolerable Acts. And the effect is the opposite of that intended. The colonies rally in support of Massachusetts and in defiance of the latest act of parliamentary tyranny. In Virginia, the House of Burgesses declares its support for Massachusetts and is promptly shut down by the royal governor, Lord Dunmore.
Oh boy.
So Virginians reconvene in their own assemblies and once more call for their rights under the British Constitution to be upheld. One of the most radical statements comes from Fairfax County, where the meeting is chaired by local patriot landowner George Washington.
I know that guy.
10 years earlier, the colonies had not dared to claim that only they had the right to govern themselves. Now, they don't hold back.
I mean, with how it is created, it makes sense, yeah. Like at first, yeah, it's, you know, clearly the British fucked up is the moral of the story, right? Like at first the colonists were saying we just want to have a right to say what we do. So, you know, maybe if the British had given them that, it would have still meant like they had less control over what they get from the colonies, but they would still get something. But by refusing even that, it is created into, you know, we just like don't want to listen to you at all anymore, right? I mean, that's the problem.
Resolved, as the inhabitants of the American colonies are not, and from their situation cannot be represented in the British Parliament, the legislative power here can of right be exercised only by our own provincial assemblies.
I'm the captain now.
Resolved, the powers over the people of America now claimed by the British House of Commons must, if continued, establish the most grievous and intolerable species of tyranny and oppression that ever was inflicted upon mankind.
Damn. That sounds hardcore.
Virginian patriots call for a Congress composed of delegates from the colonies to meet and discuss a collective response to the latest crisis. Such calls are echoed across the colonies, and in September 1774, the First Continental Congress meets in Carpenter's Hall, Philadelphia.
All right.
It is attended by 56 delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies. Among them, several men who will play key roles in the struggle ahead. John and Samuel Adams of Massachusetts, self-made men incensed by
Not
the British
familiar.
occupation of their colony. John Dickinson, a moderate from Pennsylvania who seeks reconciliation with Britain.
He's not gonna be
And
popular.
Patrick Henry, the radical from Virginia, who holds what for most is still an extreme position, total independence from Great
Oh.
Britain.
Okay.
Despite their divisions, a compromise is reached. The colonies agree to boycott all British.
The 7 Years' War, 56-63 in Europe led to the Third Carnatic War, 57-63 in India, a pivotal conflict in the struggle between the British and the French East India companies. Yeah, I really don't know much about it. That's another thing I need to watch. Some videos about the 7 Year Wars. Definitely.
goods until the intolerable acts are repealed. They will also send another petition to King George III, listing their grievances, while expressing continued loyalty and desire for reconciliation.
What do the British say though?
We ask but for peace, liberty, and safety. Your royal authority over us and our connection with Great Britain, we shall always carefully and zealously endeavor to support and maintain.
Sounds pretty nice.
Their petition never receives a formal response.
Well, left them on read.
The First Continental Congress cannot solve the crisis, but it has demonstrated that the colonies can come together to debate shared grievances and form a plan of action.
Yeah, the wheels are already in motion.
Delegates are impressed with their fellow
independence.
Americans and recognize the importance of their task. A new sense of solidarity inspires confidence that, if required, they can work together again for the common interest of all.
Okay, the stage is set. The disease was believed to have been confined to the town of Boston, but now it's so universal that there is no knowing where to apply a remedy. General Thomas Gage, British military governor of the colonies. Yeah, again, that's what I said. Like, from the last video, I distinctly remember that you always hear about Boston Tea Party, but they literally showed that there was like a couple other big cities where it happened as well. So them sending, you know, troops to pacify only one of the cities clearly was not going to solve everything. They should have known.
In
Oh.
America, the long history of colonial and frontier wars means most British colonies maintain their own militia. Now, these part-time citizen soldiers are training regularly under local officers,
Nice start.
anticipating a confrontation with the British. It's a growing concern for General Thomas Gage, the British commander in North America, with 4,000 troops in Boston.
Well,
He's
Boston is very... I mean, I don't know much about, you know, the geography of America, but yeah, Boston is very an island, basically. An island city.
also worried about the gunpowder reserves held at strategic locations across Massachusetts for use by government
Salem.
and militia forces.
As the witch
With
trials already
tensions
happened.
running high,
Yeah,
control of the
probably.
gunpowder becomes a priority for both sides. In September 1774, Gage sends 260 men to secure a powder magazine in Suffolk County, Massachusetts.
What happens?
In such a suspicious atmosphere, the sight of British redcoats on the march ignites wild rumors that villages are being attacked, civilians massacred, and that British warships are shelling Boston. None of them are true.
Fake news.
Nevertheless, thousands of angry patriots gather in the streets of Cambridge, prompting local loyalists to flee to Boston. The patriots disperse the next day, but both sides are rattled by the incident.
Liberty.
That winter, General Gage pulls his forces back within Boston and begins to fortify approaches to the city. He also requests reinforcements from Britain.
I guess 4,000 men is not a lot, yeah?
The British army is tiny, and sending troops to...
Oh wow, the British army in 1775 is 45,000 men. That is very small. I don't know if it's actually small for the time. Population was less in the time, right? But that still feels kind of small.
To America is expensive.
Other 830, Britain 15,000, Ireland 12,000, America 8,000, the Mediterranean 5,000. I guess they have a lot at sea, and the West Indies almost 2,000.
But with each passing month, colonial opposition grows stronger and more impassioned. In February, Parliament declares parts of the colony of Massachusetts to be in active rebellion. On the 23rd of March 1775, Patrick Henry addresses the Virginia Convention.
If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat, sir, let it come. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
He said that. I've seen that quote for sure.
The following month, General Gage receives orders to disarm the local militia and arrest its leaders. He targets a small town 20 miles from Boston called Concord, where he believes Patriot munitions and stores are stockpiled. But the Patriot militia know the British are coming. And the long simmering standoff between Britain and its colonies is about to explode into open warfare.
I was about to say, I know that it is not an historically accurate movie, but I'm sure there's still some stuff that must be, right? The Patriot, it's a movie I watched a lot when I was young. We had a DVD of it, and I always really enjoyed it. For a long time, I obviously thought that it was accurate until I got onto the internet and started seeing its reputation as not accurate. Not that I've ever looked into what wasn't or was accurate about it. I always just enjoyed it. I think it's a very fun war movie, a good revenge story from, Mel Gibson before he was kind of crazy. So, obviously that movie is based on some guy's family gets murdered by the British during this portion of, history. And I guess he becomes one of the leader of the rebellion and the guerrillas and everything. So I wonder if this is exactly around this time period, and again, if some of the battles, the tactics, and some of what happens is actually accurate in that movie. I wonder. Stand your ground, don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. Captain John Parker on Lexington, Common.
19th of April, 1775, Boston. Around midnight, 700 British infantry, drawn from elite grenadier and light infantry companies, cross Boston Harbor in boats and begin their march to Concord.
Just 700?
They are led by 51-year-old Colonel Francis Smith, who's been stationed in America for 8 years. His operation is supposed to be secret. The route has been carefully planned, and British scouts and spies patrol the countryside. But the Patriots have their own spy network in Boston. And before the British have even left the city, several Patriot horsemen, including Paul Revere, have ridden out to raise the alarm across eastern Massachusetts.
I felt like they should have expected it. You can't keep that secret.
In Lexington, Militia Captain John Parker is alerted to the approaching British column.
For him.
He gathers 80 militiamen on the village green to observe their advance.
That's a tiny village.
Around dawn,
If
at
that's
5
accurate,
a.m., the head of the British column arrives. Redcoat officers order the militiamen to lay down their arms. Shouts and jeers are traded. Then a shot rings out. From which side is not clear. The British regulars fire a flurry of shots. The militia run
It's
for
not enough
cover.
militia, yeah. They can fight.
8 lie dead or dying. Just one British soldier is wounded. This small skirmish, lasting just a few minutes, is the first clash of the American Revolutionary War.
Okay. Let's go then.
The British march on to Concord. But the element of surprise they'd been counting on was lost hours ago.
Yeah.
On arrival, the British discover most of the Patriot stores have been hidden or removed. They spread out across town to destroy what they can find.
The bonfire of contraband.
A large militia force gathers to the north, on a hill overlooking the town. They include several companies of the famous Minutemen, picked men from local settlements, ready to march at a minute's notice.
Okay. Never heard the name before.
400 strong, they outnumber the British detachment guarding North Bridge 4-1.
Yeah, but I mean, still militia, right? They're not trained expert soldiers. And in history, we've often seen like militia versus, trained soldiers. Even with crazy numbers, the soldiers tend to have the upper hand, even with the, like the disadvantaged numbers. Yeah.
The militia are agitated. There are rumors of a massacre at Lexington. They can see smoke rising from Concord.
I guess so,
Under
yeah.
pressure from his men to act, Militia Colonel James Barrett orders an advance to the bridge.
Will they
Both
make
sides
it?
have orders not to fire first. But alarmed by the approaching militia, the British fire a ragged volley. The militia return fire.
It's a bridge, it's easy to defend, no?
A handful of men fall killed and wounded
Man, the
on
art
each
is so
side.
freaking good. Huh?
The outnumbered redcoats turn and run.
Okay.
The militia, stunned by their own success, do not pursue.
Yeah.
A standoff resumes, but now with bodies from both sides strewn across the battleground. The British commander, Colonel Smith, recognizes how exposed his force is, and around noon he orders his men to march back
Makes
to
sense,
Boston.
yeah.
By this time, thousands of Patriot militia are lining the road.
Oh boy.
They mount a series of ambushes on the British, targeting officers, several of whom are killed and wounded. The British respond by bursting into homes along the route to clear out rebel marksmen, bayoneting anyone they find within.
Damn. It's
The British
escalating so
march
quickly.
descends into a shambolic retreat.
His skill.
Around 2 p.m., Smith's force reaches Lexington. Here,
And
they are met by
linked up.
reinforcements from Boston, Lord Percy's brigade, 1,000 strong, with 2 cannon. They face
Better than
nearly
nothing.
4,000 Patriot militia.
Okay.
Percy's 2 guns open fire, dispersing the militia and buying the British some time.
With just
before
2
the retreat
cannons.
continues.
That's enough. That's crazy.
Lord Percy oversees a more disciplined fighting retreat. But militia sniping claims a steady toll of his men.
Damn.
As the embattled redcoats approach Boston, they
There's so
veer
many.
east to avoid another large militia force gathering at Cambridge. They reach the
It's not really a
safety
militia
of
anymore, it's an
Charlestown
army.
around
There's way too many of
nightfall.
them.
Many British soldiers have been marching and fighting without rest for almost 24 hours. All told, the British have lost 73 men killed and
Just
173 wounded.
I'm surprised.
The
I thought it would be
Americans,
way worse.
49 killed and 39 wounded.
I mean, it's still a lot of people dead, right? But I don't know, from the way this was showcased, I still thought, yeah, the British would lose at least half of their people or something. I guess not. I guess not. I mean, obviously, I know muskets are insanely inaccurate and all that, right?
It was nearly much worse for the British.
And I guess it did look like they never fought in line battle, where, you know, people just stand in line and just wait to be shot. So I guess musket fighting while running away and disorderly, definitely probably even harder to hit anyone.
As Lord Percy later writes of his rescue of Smith's force,
I had the happiness of saving them from inevitable destruction.
of their opponents, he adds,
Whoever dares to look upon them as an irregular mob will find himself much mistaken. They have men amongst them who know very well what they are about.
by the scale of 18th century warfare,
Bloody butchery.
the battles of Lexington and Concord are not much more than skirmishes. But the ramifications will be seismic.
I feel great distress from a consciousness that my abilities and military experience may not be equal to the extensive and important trust. George Washington, accepting command of the Continental
In
Army.
the aftermath of the fighting, 15,000 militiamen encircle Boston.
Well,
The British are under siege. Massachusetts is in open rebellion.
well,
The news spreads like a shockwave. 3 weeks later, a second Continental Congress gathers in Philadelphia. Delegates had expected to be busy coordinating further protests,
no need for protest now.
but suddenly, with the colonies in open conflict with the British, they begin to take on the work of a wartime government. Congress appoints a committee to secure military supplies, votes to raise loans to pay for them, and issue bills of credit.
£6,000.
It also passes resolutions to reach out to potential allies in Canada, Britain's Caribbean colonies, and among Native American tribes.
Really?
Many delegates are veterans of the first Congress, but there are also new faces. The celebrated inventor Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, who has returned from England.
I know the
He is
name.
appointed Postmaster General with orders to establish a new postal service. Then there's the wealthy merchant John Hancock of Massachusetts. And in June, they are joined by the young lawyer Thomas Jefferson of
Thomas
Virginia.
Jefferson, yeah.
But Congress's most urgent priority is to form a united Continental Army that can stand against the inevitable British response.
Right, yeah.
It is obvious that the large militia forces around Boston will be the Army's foundation. But who will lead them? For many in Congress, there's only one man for the job.
Washington?
The 43-year-old Virginian delegate, George Washington.
Alright.
He is well known for his patriot views and admired for his military service in the French and Indian War. As a not-so-subtle reminder of his credentials, the 6'2" Washington attends Congress in his Fairfax militia officer's uniform.
He said, I'm ready. Give me the
John
job.
Adams, who nominates him for command, also believes appointing a Virginian to command New England troops will bolster the colony's unity. On the 15th of June 1775, Congress unanimously approves Washington's appointment as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army.
Okay, well,
He agrees to serve without pay, only expenses.
I guess it's crazy
Yet
times, so
he,
that's fair.
like many Americans, is dismayed by the prospect of war.
Unhappy it is that the once happy and peaceful plains of America are either to be drenched with blood or inhabited by a race of slaves. Sad alternatives. But can a virtuous man hesitate in his choice?
I mean, it's already started at this point, huh? You have to do it.
In the tumultuous years
I've seen this
ahead,
image before.
many delegates will question the decision to give Washington command. But
Really?
ultimately, it will prove one of the best decisions ever made by Congress.
Like, was there anybody else with enough credential as him that they could have given, you know, the job to? I'm sure there were other, like, experienced military men, but I don't know. I mean, clearly it worked out.
The challenge Washington faces is immense. To form a professional army from scratch,
Yeah.
with half-trained contingents from disparate colonies, to take on one of the world's most successful military powers.
Yeah, but they do have one advantage, the freaking amount of sea in between them, right? Ocean between them. And the British also seem like they have very little army at this time. Now, obviously, they can always make it bigger to deal with this, but yeah, the advantage is the freaking amount of land in between, right? I mean, you know, for example, like the British themselves, they've always had this advantage, right? Even though it's a very little amount between Europe and between the main Europe mass and Britain, but even with that little amount of you know, water in between, it's enough to have been like their greatest production for a long time, right?
And before Washington can even reach the army, he learns the British have already attacked.
Well, on termine next
If
episode.
you want to be first to see new episodes of the American Revolution, then Prestige
I'm guessing this is the sponsorship, Nebula, yeah. As always, thank you to the sponsors for, you know, allowing this incredible video to happen. Yeah, incredible video as always. The narration, the presentation, the way they make everything easy to understand, and the incredible art that they use. I don't know, just one of the best channels on YouTube ever, I feel like. And yeah, I would say that was very interesting. Things are really starting to go crazy. I guess next time will really be mostly battles, I assume. Yeah, you know, I've never known so much about like what led to the revolution, and you know, the war, I guess. The American War of Independence, I believe it is referred to. I find this very, very interesting. Like before, all I knew is like, yeah, just the British and the US went to war. Well, the US, you know, the colonists went to war because, I don't know, the colonists didn't want to follow like British rule or something, and law, so they just went to war over that. But that was like obviously a very small summary of what led to it. And I kind of love, you know, this kind of history video that don't just go on the big overall event, skipping all the little in between. Yeah, like they mentioned a lot of the little in between. Kind of like there was a lot of mention of the potential propaganda that the Patriot side is doing, which, you know, like clearly I'm not judging whether it's good or bad, right? But you know, inflating that the British did this terrible thing when they might have not, and so motivating people to actually fight against the British. It's really interesting, all those small things that are being mentioned and, you know, lead to the different events that actually happen. Very interesting. So great video. Looking forward to the next episode, and I guess also looking forward to the next episode of The Rise of China from Epic History. Great stuff, great stuff. So here's the link. Super interesting.